All right, good afternoon. We'll go ahead and get started. Thank you for joining our session. To introduce myself, my name is Benjamin Reed. I am a PM with the Commercial Software Engineering Org, formerly known as DX. And I'll let my co-presenter.
Hi, folks. Good afternoon. Awesome. Yeah. I didn't hear anybody say it. Again, good afternoon. Now we are alive. Awesome. My name is Gautam. I'm a peer of Ben in the same team. I focus more on the Azure side, where he focuses more on the Office side. So we're here together.
Absolutely. It's better together. So today I want to ask a couple questions. Who here is an Office developer? Would sort of indicate themselves. OK. Have you, the Office developers in this room, have you played around with any Azure services, or are you like coded up on Azure at all? Yeah? Sort of? Because I was going to say that if you're an Office developer, whether you know it or not, you're going to be somewhat of an Azure developer. Because if you're connecting into Office 365, you have to use Azure Active Directory. And so there's a lot of developers that don't consider themselves an Azure developer, but they don't realize that they are leveraging some of those workloads. And then also, I was going to say, who here considers themselves an Azure developer and has built and done things on Azure? OK. We have a couple hands out there. Have you, for those of you that are Azure developers, have you developed on Office? Have you done any of the integrations with Office? OK, a couple nods there. That's good. So with this session, Gautam and I, we want to present to you how Azure and Office together can complement each other. And so I'm going to step back and look at the Office platform, and we'll let the slide build out. So for those of you that have built integrations into Office, you know that there's a variety of different ways to connect into the Office platform. Now, from a back-end perspective, for years there's been services and there's been RESTful APIs that you can connect in to bring that data into your applications. And so there's been a lot of momentum around the Microsoft Graph. So I'll sort of start at the foundation. The Microsoft Graph is really sort of the core foundation of the data that's available in the Office 365 platform. And then the Office team has opened up canvases within the first-party clients where you can build integrations where a user can naturally leverage your applications that you've built in the context of the work that they're doing through add-ins and these canvases that spread across, whether it's a document, whether it's a conversation in Teams, or a page. And then there's also the opportunity that as you're building your own bespoke app, your standalone web or mobile app, you're able then to pull in Office, whether it's via Office Online or then the Microsoft Graph data.
Now, if you look at Azure platform, you have plenty of services that's out there. And I'm sure you would have heard and attended a bunch of sessions on each of the deep topics. But if you're coming from Office 365, looking at Azure, it's quite easy to get overwhelmed with the options that's there. And where do you even get started? I mean, you look like a beast. So idea of this session is if you really bring Office, which is really best platform for collaboration, mobility, intelligence, and all the favorite tools that you use today and your organization, employees are using it today. Now you bring in Azure, which is an enterprise-grade, hyperscale, open and flexible platform which offers you a lot of services. What magic can we bring if we combine this together? So essentially in this session, we're going to talk about it, and we will emphasize 3 major benefits that we can seek to see while we basically do that. The first is, naturally, you should expect a modern business application development platform to build your applications. Second, a better integration story, because now you don't have a different vendor for your productivity cloud. You don't have a different vendor for your cloud development, and it's coming from a single vendor. So naturally, you would expect us to do some work, and it's happening, and we'll talk about it. And third, naturally, what this to mean is better productivity for yourself as a developers and also for the users of the applications that you basically build. So how to basically get into this and make this simple? And also, how do we talk about what's possible and tease this idea of creativity and innovation and get you started is the attempt that we're trying to do in this particular session today. So we're framing our conversation around these 3 pillars or tasks, as we call it. first is you need to access the data which is in Office 365, rich contextual data, and get that in as the first step. And how do you do it effectively and easily is the first thing we're going to talk about. Second is, OK, now you got this data, but then you need to process the data that you have received in probably simple unit of execution of code, and probably that may not be enough, and you want to build a workflow around it, and how do you basically do that processing? So that's the second thing we're going to talk about. So the third task we're going to talk about it. Oh, this is all great, you know how to process it, but if you're really building this canvases which Ben just talked about, how do you now host that on Azure? Or if you're building a mobile or a web app which is using contextual Office 365 data, how can you leverage Azure services to basically empower that thing? Okay, so first we'll talk about Office 365.
Thank you. When it comes to accessing the data that's available in the Office 365 platform, it's really much more than data. Because with the Microsoft Graph, the Microsoft Graph stemmed originally out of a user's identity. So initially, there was an Azure AD graph where you could get insights about a user, the org hierarchy, the teams they were on, et cetera. And then we started layering on top of that workloads such as the documents, the work they were doing, that they were creating, the reports, the various activity and the productivity that they were creating, so the different content assets. And then continued on that are the relationships. So once you know who a user is and what they're working on, you can begin to understand the team and how they interact and influence each other and collaborate and network with each other. And so with that comes a level of insights. And so when it comes to the Office 365 platform, the data that you're accessing is more than just like a document or a file or user parameters around a user within an organization. But you're going to be, through the Microsoft Graph, you're going to start to be able to get better insights and intelligence to how they work and what they're working on. And with that, really be able to shape an answer to the business solution that your application is delivering. And so at that, really that's, the data is core to answering those problems that your application is trying to solve. And you do that through these common areas of this rich context. So with the Microsoft Graph, you can call in and you're able to see who their manager is, who's the direct reports. You can understand items on what documents they've been recently working on. You get, as I mentioned before, those insights where such as you can begin to develop and see patterns of how people work, what times are best to email or work with groups. Subject matter experts, that's been a common request we've seen, is how do you find within a large organization the subject matter experts to reach out to. And then real-time updates. So the graph allows you to be proactive rather than being reactive and having to allow the user to go off and get the information they need and then bring it into your application. You can surface that to them in context. So with that, the Microsoft Graph, as I've mentioned, there's been a lot of talk about it. There's some great sessions this week. So we'll share some what they are, and you can go get deep technically on them. But Microsoft Graph isn't the only way to connect into Office 365 data. For years, there's been the service APIs directly with the products, directly with each of the platforms. Now, those will continue to be available and supported. There's more friction on the developer side, having to manage a lot of the contextualization and the drawing out of insights in that on your end. But the Microsoft Graph is what we are going to really be pushing forward as the future of how you would connect into Microsoft Cloud services. And the final call out with that is that the graph spans also beyond the Office 365 data. You carry the relationships and the contextualization that's in the graph into some of the Azure services and Intune, device management, and the whole organization. So when you're looking at what applications you can leverage the Microsoft Graph and Office 365 data in, it's really any application. They can be web apps that you're building, it can be mobile apps. There's a lot around bots. That's a very popular subject right now, and there's some great sessions that showcase deep integrations with bots and Office 365 data and background process. So it's really not limited. When it comes to the solutions that you're working on, the Microsoft Graph and the Office 365 platform allows you to bring in a wealth of information that will empower you to do more. So we're going to jump into a demo, and this demo for context, is going to give you an end-to-end sort of look at how the Microsoft Graph and Office 365 data can improve a user's engagement with each other. And so in this case, we're going to do a demo. It's called Work Rides. It's a carpool demo. In this case, I'm going to be impersonating a gentleman by the name of Garrett. And this is a third-party app that's been provided for organizations that want to mobilize their employees to car share and carpool to work together. So I'll sign in with my credentials. As I mentioned before, this app leverages the Microsoft Graph to carry the user's credentials into Azure Active Directory. So let's see, Garrett. And our fictitious name is Fabricam Co. That's our company. And I'm going to be looking at getting a ride into work tomorrow. And what this, oops, let's see, one second. Let's make sure. Oh, it's a single T. Am I not? Double R. I need some graph intelligence right now to help my spelling. All right, so as Garrett signs in, you'll notice that it's going to pull up his user profile. And so this user profile is being pulled by the Microsoft Graph and surfaced to the user. And previously, as Garrett would have configured his profile, it would pull in his office location. It would know his typical work hours. And so Garrett wants to find a ride. So he's going to look within the directory, within his organization, who are the drivers that are available to him. Now, the Microsoft Graph, we had talked about intelligence in the Office platform. You look at Ann Wallace, and notice it shows that she's out of office. And now she's the closest driver to Garrett in this case. But by leveraging the Microsoft Graph, you can start to get signals that, hey, certain people aren't available, so you can surface that in your application so that users don't have to wait for an email back. And he can avoid that extra churn of requesting a driver. So I'm going to decide that, my boss is Garrett's boss is David. He's a little far away, but that's okay. He wants to talk to him and do a sync on the ride to work. So the times look great. He's going to ask for a ride. The Microsoft Graph then opens up an email and in context and has a templatized response. Now, if Garrett wants, he can edit it, or he can just send it with leveraging the Graph APIs. He gets a notification that it's sent. Now, my boss in this case is at home working. So as he's working, David notices that he gets an email. And so he can look at this email that's notified him that he's got a ride request. And in doing that, he sees, it reminds him to go into the app. So to avoid just repeating sort of the authentication process, David would log into the app. He would see a ride request. He would have an opportunity to respond to the ride request and accept or reject it. And it would give him sort of an updated estimate on his trip, because he would see where Garrett lived, and it would add that extra time to his commute. If he likes it, he would click accept. It would open up an email. It would send confirming that ride request to Garrett. And then it would publish a calendar appointment, both on David's calendar and Garrett's. And so you can see here a calendar schedule was made for the following day. And there we go. You can see it right there, that it pushed it out to both Garrett's and David's calendars. And so this is just a demonstration of how you can use the Office 365 platform to bring in information about users, their activity and the way they work together to provide more insightful and intelligent interactions.
Awesome. Now let's shift the gear to the second task we talked about. So in Ben's scenario, you saw a full-fledged app from a user experience perspective, right? So now how do you basically handle this request and then process this data and call Graph to get to this information? So we'll talk about it. That's where Azure comes in. And you have lot of options, but the best, or easiest tools to get started with on Azure is basically serverless. Quick show of hands, how many of you here attended the serverless platform overview session 2 days ago on Tuesday? Cool, awesome. Then like a quick question. So there are 3 components which we primarily when you look at Azure platform, 3 primary technologies. Can you name all 3 of them? Anybody? And you have a?
There's a prize.
Good? Oh, I want name of 3 services which we basically are focusing on serverless. Anybody? Logic apps, yes.
Functions? Yeah.
Third, no. Third. It's a service we launched just a month ago. But I'll still give it to you. It's for you, so I'll come and give it to you, or Ben, you want to give it?
Yeah.
So you almost got it. So third one is basically Event Grid.
I'll give a couple.
So, okay, let me have a kind of picture. How many of you here have used Azure Functions? Not many. Logic apps, anybody in the room?
Yeah.
Or Flow? Okay, and I'm assuming, okay. And then anybody have used Event Grid by any chance? Okay, good then. So I think the topics are relatively new for this crowd. Interesting. So basically, these are the 3 services. Function has always been there, from quite some time right now. And Logic Apps was actually there even before Functions was launched. And Event Grid is a new service still in public preview right now. We basically pushed it to public preview just last month. So how does this make sense? And before we even get there, let's take a step back and understand what is serverless. So if you have seen the evolution of cloud, we talked about IaaS, then we talked about PaaS, we talked, and then this notion of serverless comes in. The idea of serverless is, first of all, completely abstracting the infrastructure service away from you. Though if you have used app services, for example, some of you mentioned, though you don't directly deal with it, but you still select, a virtual machine, by choosing an app services plan when you create app service. You still sort of know that there is virtual machine in the background, but we will manage that for you. In serverless, like Functions, for example, you don't even see anything of that sort. All you really care about is your code. You bring it and it will run for you. So the complete abstraction of server is the first trait. Second is serverless is basically event-driven at an instant scale. Essentially, in a business workflow, you are reacting to a certain event. And when that happens is when you want your code to be running or your logic to be running, and only for that duration of time. And if there are more events are happening, you want your application to scale out or scale up, and then also go back when the load goes down. So it's completely event-driven and instant scale. And third is you only pay for what you basically are consuming on the cloud at that point of time. So this is the serverless, and obviously the benefits are pretty straightforward from a DevOps perspective, faster time to market, and the ease of use of these technologies. So as I already mentioned, there's Functions, Logic Apps, and Event Grid, and we'll talk about them in detail. But yeah, the answers you gave earlier wasn't really wrong, because these 3 is how you get in, but these 3 services connects you to plethora of other services on Azure. For example, database, storage, security like ADI, Active Directory, IoT, you guys mentioned, machine learning and cognitive services, you also mentioned. So this gives you platform and hooks to talk to all the services in a very seamless and easy way. And of course, from Microsoft, you expect the best development experience with Visual Studio, local environment, debugging, and all of that goodness, and you obviously get with all of them. So if you look at Functions, I'll do a quick demo. Functions, if you are familiar with AWS, it's sort of the Lambda compete. So Functions stands out in primarily, I would say, 2 things. One is Functions has this notion of bindings. Essentially, Functions is really function as a service, and that's it. So if for a function, you pass a parameter and you basically expect an output, right? So that's basically trigger. Based on what what you're passing as input is the input binding, and what you're passing out is an output binding. And it gets invoked based on a trigger, and that's basically a trigger. So this binding concept is something unique with functions. So it lets you trigger a function based on many Azure services. It has bindings to many Azure services and also output bindings. For example, we have even binding for Twilio if you want to send an SMS after the function is done, or send an email, and etc. And at Ignite, we announced the public preview of Microsoft Graph binding for functions. So what this lets you do is, right in your function code, you can react to events like mail messages, calendar events, personal contacts, OneDrive items being updated, created. You can read from Excel or OneDrive, and you can write to say Excel, OneDrive, or on Outlook messages. So let's have a quick look at how does functions look like. So I already opened up my portal to save some time. So this is basically how functions looks like. It's just a piece of code, as I said. It's a very simple function. Let me just demonstrate that to you, as most of you, quite a few of you are relatively new to functions. It's a simple HTTP trigger. Internet is function is not hosting. Okay. Okay, there you go. So let me now try this. There you go. So basically, there's a very simple function. In the query string, you can pass any parameter. Here I'm passing Ignite. I can just say hello to Ben, and it just responds to you, hello Ben. Simple hello world example, right? So what's happening in the portal is it's simple. You can write this function. It is reacting to HTTP trigger, basically querying for either a body JSON or a query string, and it basically responds with that message. Very simple function. And you can actually test it all within the portal itself, and you can just pass parameters and get the output. You can see the log and everything. What also gets interesting from an Office perspective is here. You can also visualize the triggers and output triggers over here and the binding too. Now, if I click on new input, you can now see the binding for Excel, OneDrive, and Office 365 coming up out here. So basically, this means you can talk to it, read a table from Excel, and then process something on top of it, and then say use Outlook mail message and output binding and drop an email when your job is complete. So to make this experience very simple for you, we also have created some simple solutions for you to get started. So, and I'll show you how you do it. When you create a new functions from portal, you can actually choose a scenario and say Microsoft Graph. You already have 5 samples automatically prepared for, so you can get started very easily. And I'll show you one of the functions in context of the demo which Ben showed. When the mobile app loaded, you saw this profile picture of the logged in user coming up over there. So what this function does is it basically takes the graph token for your Office 365 tenant as an input binding, and it basically calls the graph API that you're seeing and returns the photo. And that's, if you can basically at the page load of that mobile screen, you call this function, it returns the image, and then you basically pass it and then display it. Really as simple as that. So, and hence almost every single action that you saw on that app can be easily triggered by triggers a function which basically powers the backend for it. Now let's come back to the slides. Okay, so we also have a lot of customers using this already, and one customer to talk about is Inpora Technologies, who is a cloud solution partner. Any CSPs in this room? Few. So I'm sure as they can tell more about it than myself, a day of a CSP is they are onboarding new customers. For every new customers they onboard, they need to create an Office 365 tenant, and they need to create users, and then they have to assign licenses to these users, and then there is a lot of churn in the whole process, and then you got to keep doing it over and over and again. And also some people extend it beyond Office 365 and go to say provision a DNS record, provision a website, etc. And many a times it's quite a manual process given the number of customers you're handling. So what Importer Technologies does is they actually use Graph and put that on a function and automate this entire process so that you have one thing running. The moment a customer signs the agreement and they have the right compliance in place, somebody just triggers a function for that user and everything just happens automatically. So and they are now currently exploring graph binding, and they'll be back to Redmond, and we're going to work with them to use the graph binding because that's so new. When we worked with them really 4 weeks ago, we didn't have it yet, so they started working on it, and they'll be back to Redmond to use the graph binding. So moving on to logic apps. So now we talked about, hey, if there's an event, how do you process this in a single unit of execution, which is basically functions. But what if you want to connect different things and talk to different systems and work on it? That's where the power of logic apps comes in. And the logic apps power gets amplified because it brings with it almost 180 SaaS connectors. So it has connections to Azure, which you would expect, and Functions also has it to most of them. But the other Microsoft services is all lit up here automatically for you. And specifically, if you look at the ones highlighted in the red box, they're all the Office 365 connectors. And it goes beyond it because you can even connect to literally any SaaS system like Dynamics 365, and even a user, new customer lead comes in, and you want to spin off a marketing campaign, using say machine learning and cognitive services and do something, you can do it. You can put it all together in logic apps without almost writing any piece of code. You can even connect to say on-prem and talk to your SAP system or Siebel if you're using them for financial records, and then sort of connect the whole thing using logic apps. Let's talk about Event Grid a little bit. This is a new service. If we really look at the theme of the discussion so far, we're all talking about doing something when a business event happens, right? So now you need a single place to effectively manage all these different events. So that's the promise that Event Grid basically does. It's built on top of Service Bus, platform. So all the goodness and the performance comes there, and it is enhanced and done for serverless scenarios. So you have a lot of publishers, which is typically Azure services today, and the events can be handled in these services. And it's just one-month service. We're going to add more services here and there. That's where the power of integration comes in. As and when we have more Office 365 services or Azure, we're going to just keep populating this, and you got to have a better experience. But the beautiful part is custom events today. So you can create any custom event and then basically connect all them together. So now let's put all these three concepts together and look at a fully functional demo. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take the employee onboarding experience. Honestly, this has been a pain for me. The first company I joined, a large SI company, the moment I joined the organization, it took almost 3 weeks to get my user ID and password. So I was just coming to office because I had to be in office for 8 hours for the company policy. I didn't know what to do after I come to the office. Once I got my username and password, it took forever to basically get access to the product licenses to get my Outlook running. And I'm sure many of you can relate to this experience. And even people who are running this, I'm sure they are efficient, but there's so many people happening, there's so many work happening, it's almost very difficult to manage this. Now, this task can be made completely automated without almost writing any lines of big lines of code. And that's the scenario we're going to talk about. So here we will use a simple web form, which would even come from a resume. You can have an Office plugin, you click on a button, and then it basically takes the user first name, last name, everything, and creates a new employee request. In this example, I'm using a simple web form. You basically do that, and then a function will basically process this data. If you're uploading something, it will take care of all that, and it raises an event on Event Grid. Then the Event Grid event is what will trigger the logic apps. In logic apps, I'm basically connecting to Office 365 and using Graph to create a user, assign Office 365 license so that at least he can access his emails the day he comes to the office, and also sets up a calendar invite with his manager the first day he comes to the office, and obviously sends a welcome email saying, very excited to have you join our company. This is your username and password. Even say a day before he joins the organization. So let's look at this demo right now. So let me start with Visual Studio. So I actually showed you function experience from the portal. In fact, you can do all of that from Visual Studio if you really love coding. So that employee request is basically that specific functions. If you look at this function, all I'm really doing is let me first show the demo and then come to the code. So this is my form. This is a simple new employee form, simple no JS code, no rocket science here. I've entered all the information. I just created alias as Superman because I was not allowed to get that alias in Microsoft. And I'm going to join the team, awesome, and then I'll basically hit submit. So essentially when this happens, this will be handled by this function. All these functions doing is a simple HTTP trigger. It will get this information, pass the JSON that's coming in, creates a temporary password and generates it, and then goes and raise an event in event grid. And this is happening in the functions. When after that happens, you can come to logic apps, and the whole flow is basically authored over here. So I'll quickly go through this, and then we will see how things are happening. As you can see, I already got an email saying that your employee is created, and it's a welcome email for the employee just created. We'll go there very soon. So if you look at this, what I'm doing is have a event grid. It just raises whenever an event is raised to event grid, it starts, and then basically I'm passing the JSON so that I can pass these parameters down in my path. And this is where the Office magic comes in. Here I'm basically calling Graph API to create an user, and all the variables that you see, department, first name, last name, is all coming from the JSON payload. And you can easily use this variables from your previous steps very seamlessly in your flow, and it basically slows down. And then flows down. And then you basically, once it is done, user is created, you again hit the parser to get back the information. Now you want to basically assign a manager to this person. For that, again, you use graph. No surprises there. And then you can assign licenses. Again, graph. No surprises there. Once that is done, you basically will use Outlook to basically set up a calendar invite and then send an email. And as you already saw, that email already came. Since I gave my email ID, I didn't expect to get stuck on an Outlook showing an email part with the demo ever in my life. Yeah, there you go. Oh yeah, it's a real email. So this email just says, hey, welcome, and email and password, and then if you want to log in and change your password, this is the link, right? So this, as you can see, there was probably 10 lines of code in the whole process, and then if you know the Graph API, that's about 4 or 5 Graph APIs you need to know. That's pretty much it. And then you can probably build this application in a matter of what, a day or two. And then the best part is you can add to this workflow. If you have more steps in it, you can do it. And in Logic Apps, you can also add conditions. You can do a for each if you're doing a bulk upload of employees over a period of a week. And you can do all that magic in Logic Apps. So now let's come to Logic Apps and see what actually happened here, right? Is it really, to see if it's real. So if I come to overview, you have a log of all the events that is there, and for every single event that is raised, you can actually trace through it. So this is the event that happened. I'll click on this, and will bring back my designer, and will tell me how many seconds it took to basically complete this task. And if I look at this, this is the output that has come. As you can see, yes, it is the Superman employee. And I can if I create a user, it goes, pushes JSON payload and creates the employee, and this is the ID for that employee in my Office 365 tenant. And here I'm actually passing the ID of this particular employee created to assign a manager to this. And then if you look at the Office 365 license, I'm basically assigning a license to this, right? In the background, it will take care of other licenses. Then I'm sending a welcome email. So basically, the body, everything is just written over here. And then also on the new Office 365 ID that's created, it will set up a calendar on the new email account. So that's basically how this whole process works. So let me switch to quickly to another Office 365 example on Logic Apps. So let me bring it up real quick. Honestly, this demo I created out of a little bit of a sheer frustration and excitement at the same time this week, because I was getting a lot of emails back from Redmond, and then my manager wanted to know some of the important emails on Ignite, and I had to update him and then also do work here. At the same time, there were a lot of importance email which I couldn't relate to. So basically, what I did is I created a simple workflow, and we can show how really easy is it to just work with Office 365. So all this workflow does is whenever an email comes to my inbox, I basically logged into my Outlook account. It checks my inbox every 3 times every minute, and if the subject contains Ignite, I don't want to worry about anything that comes new. I just want to send it to my manager. So it's saying the subject contains Ignite. If it's true, I'm actually here connecting to Office 365 right from Logic Apps, and then I'm saying find my manager. I was lazy enough to put my manager email ID here actually. So it will go find my manager for myself, and then basically sends an email saying, hey, my manager Nathan, email, it's action for you and not for me. And then to show how this actually happens, so that was the true statement. If false, let's say I want to really figure out, whether for the rest of the emails, I can even go ahead and say, let's analyze the text analytics, mesh current service API, and then basically detect sentiment. If some customer or one of my colleagues is really upset, I would rather let our current services tell me that is the case. Only then probably I'll react to it. And again, I don't know react. I can actually add one more action in the bottom, and then use Office 365 again. Users, and then there are a lot of actions that you can do. Here I will say, hey, let me get my direct reports and pass those emails to them and say, hey, please take care of this email. So basically, I sort of automate the whole thing so that everything is taken care, without me have to looking at the email for this particular week. The idea of this is to show, how easy is it to talk to Office 365 in Logic Apps and almost automate any business workflow. I'm sure you can imagine thousands of workflows. And we also have Microsoft Flow, which is basically a subset of Logic Apps. Almost what I just showed you can be done in Flow. It doesn't. You don't need to be a developer, even a business user, be able to do it, and that's the whole purpose of flows. Okay, let's get back to the slides. So let's move on to the last task, which is hosting the canvases in Azure, or basically your mobile apps and web apps. So in Azure, you have a lot of options even to host something, all the way from virtual machine to containers to Service Fabric to App Service. So App Service is what I would strongly recommend you to start with if you're essentially hosting a standard website for standard stack like .NET, Java, PHP. It's the best place to go. It's a very seamless experience. Similarly, for data, you have lots of options. We already used blob storage in my previous example to store the driving license and the SSN card that I was uploading in the process. But if you want SQL database for relational, you want Cosmos DB for non-relational, you have like plethora of options on the storage as well. So let's talk about a customer example who are using this scenario, and I will.
So as Gotham mentioned, Chorus is a longtime Office 365 ISV who for years have been integrating with COM add-ins to the Office client. And they Chorus is a service that provides users and teams that collaborate around formal, sensitive documents, ones that you would use with legal or contractual cases or proposals that you would send out. And so the couple things that they help solve is that the interfaces, one, it's super easy to use. It brings people together naturally the way they use it. And in Chorus's case, as they've modernized and gone to the cloud, they've taken both a bet on Office and Azure to provide an end-to-end service, leveraging a lot of what we've talked about here in this session. And so with this, I'm going to jump in and demo and demonstrate Chorus's solution. It's a document builder solution, and in order to show like a richer demo, we're going to click through some slides. But I'm going to jump over here, leave it there, to show you the actual add-in that they've developed. Oops, I got to sign in. It logged me out. And we'll get, so it's available in the Office store. But as we mentioned earlier in the session, one of the ways that Azure and Office come together is through this canvas and interface that you can surface your application to users in the context of the first-party client applications. So in this case, Chorus has an Office add-in. You can see I've logged into my account. And it sits here on the task pane, and it pulls up relevant information to me as the user, and you'll also notice that it's got what we call an actionable message, so it's easy to find and notify. This task pane here is just a simple iframe surfacing a web property. All of this is run by Azure, powered by Azure and App Services, and so their application and service is hosted and supported on the back end. The data then is, they leverage the Microsoft Graph to surface that data and bring it through. So here, jumping back to the slides, we're going to see that in the context of a working team, if we're building out a proposal and I need my colleagues to jump in and collaborate, and we start writing custom text around this client that we think we might use later on in either the proposal process or later on when we reach out to them to follow up on status, the Chorus allows users to seamlessly click on the add-in and save that content module, that text up into the cloud, whether it be OneDrive or the SharePoint site, so that it can be accessed later or worked on later by others. And they leverage the Microsoft Graph to pull that back and save that up to the cloud. So as we move on, additionally, from not only creating the proposal in the document, there'll be aspects when you're working together that there'll be just boilerplate content you'll need to pull in. And rather than rewrite or try to customize that for every one of your documents, Chorus provides a service that says the legal team or the marketing team are going to create templatized text and jargon for either a specific customer or for a specific proposal or legal case. And those can be housed and stored up in the cloud, whether it be on SharePoint or on a OneDrive, and with just a seamless click of a button, can be pulled into the context of that message. And so it allows the teams to work on that document separate from the natural flow of working with the customer in development of a proposal. And then we can see as well that as you do that, those documents that are hosted up in the cloud, they get changed. The legal team could go in and change a couple clauses. Procurement could change the close dates requirements. And so if they get updated in OneDrive through the Microsoft Graph, you can listen and you can pull signals through webhooks and Delta Query to changes to those documents, and then notify users as they're working in Word that there's been an update to the clause in this section of text. And then with a simple click of a button in that task pane, as the user is working through the document, they can refresh and pull and populate the changes. In addition, the Chorus provides a service that then allows you to filter and really drill down into the content you want. So rather than, as we talked about the insights and the intelligence, the Chorus add-in leverages search and keyword text to add those filters and parameters to the query to go back and find the relevant documents for the users. And it surfaces it so that they can go down and find it and add it to the active document that they're working on.
So if you look at how is this add-in using Azure in the backend, the whole web property itself is basically hosted on app service, web app. Why would you use app service in this scenario and not say serverless, which we talked about earlier? Serverless is typically event driven. Here, you want something to be continuously running all the time. So app services is better for that scenario. So they're using app services there, and also to maintain all these relationships and the different versions of the content that is storing, etc. They use SQL DB to manage all this relational data storage, and they also also, when you look at doing this at scale in an organization of hundreds or thousands of employees, lots of people are doing it. You don't want this to be a simple HTTP request, so you're going to implement a queue mechanism to handle the load and then scale out in the backend. To basically manage that, they use service bus and obviously blob storage and table for storing files and stuff like that. An application inside the service which will let you get telemetry from a developer standpoint to figure out what's really happening in your application. Now let's wrap it up and put it all together. So if we go back to the slide that we started from, when you get Office and Azure together, it lets you definitely create an application development platform from various services in Office 365, Graph, in Azure, starting with serverless like functions, logic apps, and all the way to the rest of the heavyweight services on Azure. And as you can see in logic apps, the connectors piece is where that becomes very interesting, where we will make investments as Microsoft to add more connectors for our first-party services, and we will ensure that is of great experience for you. And not only that, let's say you are an ISV or you want a custom connector for your own application, you can as well create it. And in fact, we are also actively working with probably a lot of the typical business SaaS applications you would connect to as business and onboarding them as a connector, as you see already a lot of them in our demos. What this all really means to you is with a very less time, you should be able to build your business workflows. You should be able to change the business workflows powering your applications. Hence, you give more time back to you so that you can focus on your business, do more, and do more effectively. Essentially, that means business productivity and also developer productivity for you as a developer. Takeaway, summarizing, Graph is what you should think first when you're accessing data from Office 365, and we're going to continue to make investments there. When you're starting Azure for the first time, serverless technologies probably is your best gateway into Azure, and then trust me, when you get excited, you will naturally start using different Azure services in the process. And also, you can definitely host your Office canvases on Azure. You don't have to invest, and it is very seamless. And yes, you can make use of many other services available on Azure.
So we had mentioned that there are other developer sessions out there. So one thing that's awesome about Ignite is there's some great deep technical sessions both on the Microsoft Graph, the Office Developer Platform, and the many Azure development sessions on the topics that we discussed. They go in depth, they provide code samples and getting started samples. So we highly recommend that you take some time. If you weren't able to catch them on the on-demand channels as well.
Thank you so much. Please do evaluate the session.
Yeah.
Any questions?
And if you have questions, we're a little bit over, but feel free to come up and we'd be happy to answer them.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.